Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about how the SEC needs to ban payment for order flow and to ban dark pools. And actually this article comes from a former chair of the US FDIC. So stay tuned and let's make some money. But before I dive into the video, I just want to give a massive shout out to the 4,700 of you that have currently dinged that notification bell, because you guys are always the first to watch a new video as soon as it's released. So guys, be sure to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel and ding that notification bell if you haven't already, so that you don't miss another video just like this one. And now I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, the SEC needs to find a way to curb payment for order flow. It's not clear whether payment for order flow reduces costs for retail investors or simply makes their costs less transparent. Now, this article is actually even published by the Financial Times. The FT is a very reputable media source and are typically very unbiased as well. And also the writer is a former chair of the US Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. You know, the same people that regulate those swaps on the open market or in the OTC markets. Securities and Exchange Commission Chair Gary Gensler has cast a long-needed spotlight on the practice of brokers selling their retail orders to makers of markets outside of regulated public exchanges. Typically, these are dark pools, private exchanges run by large financial institutions or wholesalers such as Citadel Securities and Virtue that execute orders internally. Critics say that payment for order flow, or PFOF, represents an inherent conflict of interest, sensibly observing that brokers should be routing orders where they can get the best price for their customers, not the best deal for themselves. Supporters argue that PFOF benefits retail investors, as market makers are required to provide prices that are better than quotes displayed by regulated exchanges. They add that broker profits from PFOF allow them to offer commission-free trading. But it's far from clear whether PFOF actually reduces costs for retail investors or simply makes their costs less transparent. By allowing market makers to attract order flow with a lawful bribe, not the best price, PFOF gives them every incentive to hide the true price at which they're willing to trade, probably leading to poorer executions for retail traders. Unlike market makers on public exchanges, dark pools and wholesalers are not required to publish and stand behind quotes. When they pay for an order, they have the discretion to trade against it or send it to an exchange. While exchange market makers must improve a published price by a penny, there's no such requirement for dark pools and wholesalers, which can and do improve price by tiny fractions of a cent. Thus, PFOF affords them a luxury of not having to compete on price to draw order flow, and to step in front of those who do with minimal price improvement. This reduces competition, but also creates disincentives for others to publicly expose their trading interest, knowing dark pools and wholesalers can so easily and cheaply jump ahead of them. The relationship of PFOF to price and quality was vividly illustrated in a recent enforcement settlement brought by the SEC against Robinhood. In that case, Robinhood explicitly agreed to accept less price improvement for its customers in return for a higher PFOF. The inferior executions given to those Robinhood customers may well have exceeded any benefit from not paying a commission. Long ago, the UK's Financial Services Authority wisely recognised the harm of PFOF to market quality and integrity, in effect banning it back in 2012. A study conducted by the CFA Institute of UK Markets found that absent PFOF markets were more liquid and pricing improved for retail investors. The reason is simple. When market makers have to compete on the quality of their public quotes and are rewarded with trades at those quotes, they compete more aggressively and incentives are aligned. Ironically, Bernie Madoff of Ponzi scheme fame pioneered the use of PFOF in the 1980s, arguing to the SEC that it would increase competition for exchanges then dominated by the New York Stock Exchange. Exchange market share has indeed shrunk to barely half, but concentrations have accumulated off exchange. Wholesalers now account for 38% of US trading volumes, mostly dominated by 7 firms. And those 7 firms include Citadel and Virtue as well. Market share for retail orders is even more concentrated, with Citadel accounting for 47%. This market dominance brings tremendous advantages for Citadel, including a privileged first look at retail order flow, a force that increasingly moves share prices, as we have seen recently with GameStop and other meme stocks. Gensler has said a number of market structure reforms are on the table, including banning payment for order flow. That may be difficult, as many free brokers might start charging commissions again to make up for lost revenue. This would be unpopular with retail investors who also vote and make political decisions or political donations. However, the return of commissions is not a foregone conclusion. Brokers such as Fidelity are able to offer commission-free trades without resorting to payment for order flow. PFOF serves as another reminder to all regulators to scrutinise schemes purportedly benefiting the little guy. History is replete with them. Madoff will be forever remembered for his multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme, but his more impactful legacy may be the damage to investors from PFOF. Let's hope the SEC can find a way to make things right. Now, I think this is a really big deal. In 2015, the FT was sold for $1.32 billion and has reported 1 million paying subscribers. This therefore makes it a very large source of financial media, and hopefully bringing even more spotlight to the issue that is PFOF can only be a good thing. Now guys, before I dive any further, I wanted to talk to you about something. A lot of people, like you and I, don't have a lot of trust in the stock market at the moment, and have been considering other alternative investments. Maybe you like cryptocurrencies, or maybe you want to invest in old whiskies and wines. But have you ever considered fine art? Now, I guess most people don't have a casual $225 million laying around for this famous painting of Marilyn Monroe, which was actually purchased by our very own Ken Griffin. However, Masterworks.io makes investing in pieces of blue chip art a possibility. Maybe you always wanted to invest in a Monet or a Banksy or a Basquiat, but you never had the cash. Well, with Masterworks.io, you can invest in shares representing each of these multi-million-dollar paintings at a fraction of the cost. The total physical art and collectibles market is currently valued at around $1.7 trillion and is expected to grow by another $1 trillion over the next 5 years. And also, contemporary art prices even outperformed the S&P 500 returns by 174% over the 25-year period between 1995 and 2020. Fine art also has almost zero correlation to stocks, and art has typically outperformed during periods of high inflation and periods of recession as well. Masterworks.io currently holds over $200 million worth of paintings, and over 200,000 users have already signed up. So what are you waiting for? If you want to invest in some pieces of fine art, then be sure to follow the link down in the description below. But as always, be sure to do your own due diligence, as this is not financial advice. Now, I also wanted to go over the fact that there is actually already a rule that allows the SEC to suspend, limit, revoke, ban, or halt dark pool activity or ATS activity. SEC Final Rule: Regulation of Dark Pools and Alternative Trading Systems or ATSs. SEC Rule 304A4: Suspension, limitation or revocation to the exchange. This rule effectively allows the SEC to ban, halt, limit, restrict or revoke access entirely to any alternative trading system, ATS, and or dark pools that connect to the exchange. The SEC can fully enforce this rule at any time for a period of up to 12 months if deemed beneficial to retail investors. The rule also states that procedures to carry out said rule are already in place. The rule was passed in October 9th, 2018, and it was effective 60 days thereafter. And therefore the rule is already in place, and at any time Gary Gensler can enact this rule and ban dark pool trading for AMC or GameStop. And therefore this rule was created for the exact situation we're in right now. The SEC just 2 weeks ago fully acknowledged that a very large portion of retail orders were being routed through dark pools, and there was also a lot of unusual activity going through these dark pools, and also a lot of unusual activity going on in the market at the moment as well. It seems like every day a new rule gets passed, new requirements to be met. All good things, but I can't get past why all that's needed for a branch of the government to do the only job they have. I'm sure they're working behind the scenes, so I don't want to sound negative, but it almost seems as if the SEC is intimidated by just 1 or 2 companies. All this chaos, extra work, public scrutiny, mocking of the New York Stock Exchange, the root of all this is contained on a few flaws or a few problems within a single building. While updated rules will certainly benefit the future, we also need to realise the rules in place now are being broken. For example, we can all agree PFOF or payment for order flow exposes a conflict of interest, but it's not the actual problem. PFOF rules do not allow orders to be routed wherever it benefits the greedy hedge fund. It does not allow more than half of the orders to go through dark pools and ATSs to manipulate prices and bankrupt companies, not to mention steal from retail investors. All that is done by a single entity almost, perhaps just a very small group of no more than 5 people at the top. So while I am for all the new rules to benefit the future, the above rule is in place now and would benefit us today. What this is getting at is that payment for order flow isn't necessarily the problem. Yes, it exposes a conflict of interest because we aren't necessarily getting the best execution price. What the problem actually is what PFOF enables. PFOF enables tons and tons of retail orders and tons of orders in general to be routed through dark pools and non-lit exchanges. These dark pools and non-lit exchanges don't have the same kind of regulation and therefore don't have the same kind of transparency and therefore are much more open to manipulation. Therefore, it isn't necessarily PFOF that's the problem, it's dark pool abuse that is the problem, and there's already a rule in place for Gary Gensler to end that abuse right now. The SEC have already acknowledged dark pool abuse, and stopping it would benefit every single person invested in the stock market. This can be enforced tomorrow. This is the catalyst we don't have to wait for, so let's start talking about this. Obviously, I have mentioned this rule in one of my previous videos a few weeks ago, hence why there's some credit here to me. But at the end of the day, I think we just need to bring more and more awareness to this specific rule. If we can talk more about this rule, then hopefully Gary Gensler will have no choice but to implement it. Obviously, as always, I'll be sure to link this post and also the SEC extract of that ruling down in the description below. And now I also wanted to talk about the buffer indicator hitting yet another all-time high. This is something that I covered in my video yesterday, but this graph better explains it because it goes all the way back to 1990. I am more and more convinced that a market crash is absolutely imminent now, and that is what will finally set off the mother of all short squeezes, rather than the other way around. So this is a chart that shows the buffer indicator and also explains the different categories such as strongly undervalued, undervalued, fairly valued, overvalued, and strongly overvalued. As you can see, the previous all-time high was back in 2000, just before the dot-com bubble exploded, when there was around about a 60%, maybe a 62% increase above the standard deviation. Actually, to correct myself, if I just read here, the internet bubble was 67% increase on the standard line. We then saw a subsequent fall after the dot-com bubble exploded, and also a subsequent fall as well back in 2008. Right now, as of September 2nd, 2021, we're currently 95% higher than the long-term trend line. As you can see right now, the market is very, very overvalued. But how is the market, and how more importantly is the government, reacting to the market being so overvalued? Well, the Federal Reserve's Rosengren and Kaplan are said to be selling all of their stocks amidst the growing ethical concerns. And this is happening while stocks are at an all-time high, after owning those shares for numerous years, among new insisted Fed tapering talks. It seems like a very coincidental time for high-ranking members of the Federal Reserve to be selling all of their stocks that they've owned for many, many years. And also seems like a great idea to be selling them because of ethical concerns. I personally think there's nothing to see here, and that this is very, very usual activity. And that's not sarcasm at all. Just in case you didn't pick up, that was entirely sarcastic, and I think that is possibly the worst excuse I've ever seen to be selling all of their stocks. They're clearly selling their stocks because they know a market crash is just round the corner. Although a very, very important possibility is that the market won't crash until the 1% get all of their money out of the stock market. The more I keep thinking about it, I realise something. Heads of the Federal Reserve are dumping stocks. Warren Buffett has been doing it all year. My theory is the government is well aware of what's happening, and the SEC are working together with their donors and special interest groups. Think about it. They can't sell billions and billions of stocks at once because it will crash prices, and therefore they've slowly been pulling money out of the stock market for months. The stock market bleeds red seemingly like once a week, and then there's a baby bounce and the stimulus or retail money pours back in. Now when all of that 1% is liquid and have sold all of their stocks, the stock market collapses and they buy it all back for pennies on the dollar. Guys, be sure to let me know down in the comments below what you think about the FT writing about the SEC needing to ban payment for order flow, and about the article being written by a former chair of the FDIC. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out those links down in the description below to Moomoo and Free Trade to get some free shares. And always guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of my others. Alternatively, subscribe to the channel and ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.